Problematization. According to Plato, the concept of self-evidence is one of the main obstacles to thinking. Thus, it is always necessary to be able to problematize our ideas and those we encounter. Problematizing is a term used as a tool for analysis and reflection. It means to identify, to uncover, or to define a problem, a question, an objection. That is, to engage in a critical process that seeks to perceive the limits or flaws of an idea, of a thesis. Here are some key elements of this process I would like to present. 1. Identification of a problem. This involves recognizing an aspect of an idea that requires deeper analysis because it is doubtful or too undeterminate. For example, one can problematize a phenomenon by identifying aspects that are not yet well understood or adequately evaluated, or that seems contradictory. Questioning. A simple question must be clear, precise, and relevant to the subject at hand, since it must invite us efficiently to rethink the statement. It can be open or closed as long as it raises a problem. This questioning can as well take the form of a complex question that prompts in-depth reflection on a given subject. Or it can also consist of a set of interrelated questions forming a broader framework for research on a subject. In all cases, the approach has an important critical component. 3. Critique. Problematizing can also be done by issuing objections that questions assumptions, that questions received ideas and usual approaches, or those approaches used by a specific person. Generally, these critiques attempt to propose new interpretative perspectives. Therefore, it is a matter of developing creatively a method of different strategies in order to explore the thesis rigorously. 4th, contextualization. The problematization process also includes contextualizing a problem, which means to take into account the different factors and perspectives surrounding it, either by proposing a change of context, by totally decontextualizing a proposition out of context, by broadening the context, or by absolutizing this proposition. Thus, problematizing consists of transforming a subject, a situation, or an idea that seems evident or certain into a problem that can be explored in a critical, analytical, and systematic way. This deepens the understanding, and it generates new knowledge or solutions to some issue. In theory, any proposition or statement can be problematized, as any idea is necessarily based on presupposition that can be criticized or reviewed. Every affirmation is subject to conditions of possibility, a phenomenon which is often remaining unconscious or non-reflected. So to problematize a statement thus means to subject it to critical examination, to identify and question its presupposition, to explore its implication and consequences, and to consider the different perspective or context in which it can be interpreted. So, in summary, we problematize by identifying and questioning the foundations of a proposition, examining the potential consequences or broader implication of a statement, producing arguments that contradicts a proposition, seeking counterexamples, finding situations or cases where the statement does not apply or leads to contradiction, altering the interpretation of a proposition, analyzing it into different contexts, be they material, cultural, historical, geographical, social, or personal. And finally, examining the logical structure of the statement to assess its internal and external coherence. Of course, there are various degrees of problematization which will challenge a statement more or less fundamentally. Problematizing primarily reflects an intellectual attitude that does not seek certainty at all cost, that does not fall into the trap of established belief. But it is not also about falling into the trap of a powerless skepticism that forbids any reliable knowledge. Indeed, when we have good reasons to adopt an idea for personal reason, through social acquisition, because it works, or because it's useful, we can keep it for all practical purposes, while knowing that this idea may one day be refuted, as we see in the history of science. We thus maintain a critical position open to the questioning of our ideas. Thus, when something is presented to us as a fact, as a certainty, we should carefully examine whether the methods used to determine this fact are reliable and precise. We can analyze the condition and context of this fact to identify its flaws, to determine the limits of its scope and application. We can evaluate the implications of this fact, consider how it is used or interpreted in order to re-examine its content. We can examine the terms, the vocabulary that its description uses in order to check their validity, clarity, and solidity. Obviously, the argument of authority or a revelation, whether internal or external, personal or collective, stands in the way of this work of problematization, unless these conviction or given ideas serve as well as a tool for problematization itself, insofar as they invite us to rethink a given proposition from another angle. Even when refuting them, these propositions make us think further anyhow about our own thoughts. Nevertheless, we should warn the reader about a certain temptation for a feeling of omnipotence that the skill of problematization can offer some weaker or more pernicious minds. The principle that any idea can be problematized can provide someone with a certain sense of invincibility and power, making one think how intelligent or witty they are for not accepting anything for granted, unlike those gullible believers. The main thinking mistake those unswerving critics commit is to completely overlook the context, the moment or situation when problematization is appropriate and when it is not. We can always criticize ideas endlessly and express our permanent dissatisfaction with reality and with thinking, thus prohibiting any fertile creation of ideas. But doubt as well has to be doubted. Thus, in spite of their imperfection, we have to give any idea a chance to exist and express its potential, no matter how limited. We need to grant any proposition at least a minimal moment of validity in order to evaluate it more adequately and observe under which condition it has any interest and meaning, instead of systematically deconstructing it. Unless we allow this moment of breathing to occur, thinking as a whole becomes a powerless and self-destructive endeavor. But in any case, problematization is primarily about maintaining a certain plasticity of mind in opposition to mechanical or rigid mental schemes.